First of all, I wanted to cry when you were talking because of what the world could be, Gary. I mean, it honestly is heartbreaking. And we're living in a world right now where Nader is still hated, but Bush is not. Bush is embraced now. Amazing. Isn't it incredible to you that Nader is still a pariah, but people have opened their arms to take Bush back? You have Olbermann, who I loved during the Bush administration. I mean, he was going harder than most with those daily, takes. He went on The View and groveled to Meghan McCain and said, I am sorry for criticizing your father and criticizing Bush. I want Bush back. Can you imagine? Can you imagine saying that as Keith Olbermann? You're talking about Michael Moore, and this was a really, really unbelievable moment when Michael Moore actually got down on his hands and knees and begged Ralph Nader. What an embarrassment that was. Because 4 years prior to that, he was campaigning for Nader. He said the lesser of two evils is still evil. I remember him at the podium. I mean, come on now. Just like you have that clip of Bernie Sanders saying why you should never acquiesce and capitulate to the Democratic Party, and now he's that sheepdog, that Ralph Nader calls him, that sheepdog corralling legitimization for the Democratic Party, to keep those leftists hanging on to hope that there's still a glimmer of hope to get that candidate. And then you have, right now, let's go to the most recent election, the fact that everyone wants to blame the left and Jill Stein voters. Can you imagine for actually Hillary losing? Why don't you look at the Democrats? If you look at these swing states and you actually go down to the votes, Democrats, a lot of them voted for Trump. Up to 8% of Democrats in some of these swing states actually voted for Trump. So why is it that Jill Stein voters continue to be blamed in every goddamn election? And I am sick of it. I'm sick of the two-party dictatorship telling us, no, next time we'll eke the needle to the left. All we've seen is it going to the right. It's gone so far to the right that now here we are 100 years after the New Deal thinking that this is revolutionary, that Bernie Sanders is a revolutionary. He's just saying what FDR did 100 years ago. Before we saw unions crushed, anarchists crushed, socialism was illegal in this country for decades. People were killed, beaten, jailed. So, yeah, it's a little bit disheartening 100 years later to say, wow, we're really starting over again? And we're not only starting over again, but we're being told to vote, just buy in, keep buying into the Democrats. Next time, abortion rights are hanging in the balance. I mean, how many elections have we been told, looked in the eye by John Kerry or Al Gore or Barack Obama and said, your abortion rights are hanging in the balance? Well, guess what, guys? You allowed this to happen. You guys built the institution that gave us Trump. This neoliberal nightmare that we're living in is why we have Trump. And already, even before Trump got in office, and they're greenlighting his justice nominees now. All these federal judges that he's appointing around the country are being greenlit by Democrats as some part of a deal. I mean, this is unbelievable now. Where's the sit-ins? Where's the civil disobedience? Okay, abortion rights are hanging in the balance now. What are you guys going to do about it? Because we've done all we can. We've been marching in the streets. We've been rallying for people who are actually going to stand up for our rights. The Ralph Naders, the Jill Steins, the Dennis Kuciniches. Where are you guys? You're going to let all this happen. You just voted in a $1 trillion defense budget for a so-called maniac who's the next Hitler. It is so unbelievable what is going on, and the fact that they continue to manipulate the masses and say, no, next time you just have... And who's going to be at next time? Baked Alaska? They're just going to look at Trump and say, well, you can't let him win again. They said this every time. It's going to be Ted Cruz next. It's always going to be, we're better than the other guy. You have to vote for us, and then we'll figure out the policies. I just saw David Cross, one of my favorite comedians, doing a bit the other day, and he said, I'm a member of the DSA. He said, I'm a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. He said, but we can't worry about that now. He said, we're in such a precarious, nightmarish, dystopian hellhole. He said, we need to just vote for the Democrats in 2018. He's like, and then after that election, then we can worry about DSA stuff. And it's like, what are you talking about? We're told this every single election. Next time, it's going to be even worse than Trump. You think the system and this institution that we built for ourselves in this crazy electoral process of dog and pony show billionaire elections, you think that the next time it's going to be different, that someone's going to be better than Trump, and then we're finally going to give room to green and third-party candidates? Hell no. It's going to keep getting worse, and they're going to keep doing this to us every time. So I think it's time to stand up and say no more. Let's not let them shame us into voting for our morality and vote for our heart, Gary. Eugene Debs said it best. He said, I'd rather vote for what I want and not get it than vote for what I don't want and get it.
And remember, they put Eugene Debs in prison because he read a letter, and that was it, and that's how fearful they were. My concern is that the left is now attacking real liberals, real progressives, that they're not. Nothing in their DNA shows that they care about everyone, and they rule through fear and mass manipulation. For example, any decent human being who has any moral compass and a sense of spiritual awareness would not sexually assault anyone or sexually intimidate people, and I support that. But what I'm curious about, maybe you could address this, is why is it that all the women who say they care about women and children didn't seem to care about Bill and Hillary Clinton did to the 500,000 plus, some say 620,000 dead Iraqi children because of their sanctions? Madeleine Albright went on 60 Minutes with Leslie Saul and said we're okay with that. What about the Bosnian children? What about Libya, where it has the only open-air slave market in the world? I had a picture on my website of 3 men hung upside down by their ankles to be sold in a flea market, in a slave market, and that's Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Not a word from the left, not a word from the women's movement. And why is it that Bill Clinton has been given a pass when there are 9 legitimate accusations of rape against him, and a lot more that wasn't rape but harassment? But that's okay. We don't see him shamed and him thrown outside. Why do we have these double standards where we say we're for something, but then it's very specific and very political?
Tribalism, partisanship, xenophobia, and American exceptionalism are hell of a drugs. We're talking about a tribalistic society that rallies along the notion that we're the best country in the world, that we can do no wrong. When we commit evils and atrocities around the world, it's because we're moral, and that's our morality, guiding this compass of this death machine. We do things with good intentions. That's the Sam Harris argument. Look, I think that this is perfectly exemplified with just the latest migrant crisis, where all of a sudden Trump did exacerbate that crisis with the family separation thing, but it wasn't too much different than the Obama and Clinton policy of mass deportation, right? They just want to go back to humane mass deportation. So this was an amazing example of kind of this almost manufactured hysteria from the media, from liberals, and from Democrats. It was amazing to me, Gary, because as someone who's an internationalist, just like you, and who feels absolutely viscerally sick when I understand that my tax dollars are paying for bombing children on a daily basis around the world, yeah, I felt like it was a little bit strange for everyone to suddenly pretend to care about separating families when our foreign policy literally separates families on a daily basis in every country that the military is in. I think this is just a perfect example of we can't go back to the Democrats are not good enough. The Democrats are continuing this horrendous, horrific foreign policy, bombing 7 predominantly Muslim countries, having special operations soldiers in 70% of the world's nations, having 800 military bases around the world with lily pads that the Pentagon can't even account for. Every base is doing untold damage to the culture, to the environment, to the society. And that's just on the surface level. I mean, the war games taking place. I mean, you could just go on and on and on. So this cognitive dissonance of having America first, this idea of we have national interests. There's no national interest. They're fighting wars on behalf of the richest oligarchs in this country for the 1%. The poor people in this country, they're not getting anything from devastating and wrecking the rest of the world. They're getting screwed, and because all of our resources are getting squandered by the military-industrial complex. So it's astounding to me, this cognitive dissonance. What is our foreign policy doing to separate families? What is our foreign policy doing to kill children? Why don't you care about that? Welcome to my world. I mean, geez, I feel like this is the crux of the issue. I talk to everyone, and I'm like, why don't you care? Why don't you care? And I think it just goes back to that sickness, the sickness of American society, that we are the empire babies. We're the children of the empire with this ego and arrogance. When you look at the mass shooting phenomenon, when you look at the phenomenon that America, it's the most dangerous industrialized country to give birth. America actually has an increase in the last 20 years of suicide, death by suicides. We have twice as many death by suicides than we do homicides in this country. How is that compared to the other countries in the world? It's actually going up. All the other countries are going down. What is the linkage of all these bizarre mass phenomenon that are just really disturbing and dystopic about American society? Could it be the fact that we are the children of the empire and we have this preordained notion that we're somehow supreme and better? And these people want to, they don't only want to have death by suicide, but they want to have suicide/homicides where they take out dozens of people with them and get it on the news. I mean, there's something extremely sick about this individualistic, this neoliberal mantra where you can be rich, you can be famous. I mean, we're the celebrity-obsessed culture. That's why Trump is kind of the perfect manifestation of all the horrible traits of our society. Like, people want to pretend like he's an aberration. Oh, no. He is actually the perfect example of what America really is. He ripped that mask off. And that's why the establishment hates him so much. He has made empire way less palatable to sell around the world, not to mention here. So they liked that Obama came in and placated everyone and made everyone fall asleep. I mean, that's why you see people who are Hillary supporters out there saying, we could be at brunch right now if Trump wasn't in office. Well, really? Because I think Hillary would have probably had a no-fly zone in Syria within the first week. Do you know what that would have done? So, yeah, I'm right there with you, Gary. I'm an internationalist through and through. I'm just as sickened by the suffering of Syrian children as I am the suffering of Palestinian children, as I am the homeless kids right outside of my apartment. And I just don't understand how we can make people understand that we are in one global community and the world continues to shrink. And as the climate crisis gets worse, the world is going to shrink even more. If people are devastated by this, and people are so cynically, they want to punch down to immigrants and refugees and migrants, not understanding that our policies are what is causing the refugee crisis or what is causing the immigration crisis. Go back to NAFTA, go back to the dirty wars. You mentioned the coups in Honduras, El Salvador. I mean, this is what the crux of our policies are. And so what are we going to do when the climate crisis brings tens of millions of more refugees to our borders? We're in one world here, and we got to open our borders and open our arms because things are going to just get worse from here unless we open our hearts more to humanity.